thing I'm talking about. And then thirdly, what's the best thing that ever happened to you? Now, somebody said, I don't want to brag. It's not bragging. Margaret said something that's very important. We like celebrating with this class. Every time I find out something that somebody in this class has done, Buddy Gentry must be the most famous sign maker in America.
Yeah.
Because they have a story on him in the Starkville Daily News all the time.
Yeah.
So it's not going to take long. I want you to take 15 minutes. We're going to try to get this done in 15 minutes. We got a microphone we're going to pass around. Pick the question you want to answer.
Mama. Kay's mama. Mama Kay. I'm just saying hello. She got here late. I'm sorry, I didn't.
Are you interrupting our process? You won't get the food here.
I'm watching for the food.
Okay. All right. Who influenced you the most since you left Starkville? 2. What event have you done that's really special? Or what's happened to you that's pretty cool? Pick one of those. Margaret?
Okay, I think one of the coolest things that I did, and it was with my classmate, and she's no longer with us, Lucy. I think it was on Facebook, she posted, if somebody will go on a 14-day cruise with me, I'll pay for the cruise, you just have to pay for your airfare. And I thought, well, that's a winner, so I did. And Lucy and I went, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I still miss her today. And it's funny, I still have her on my Facebook, and I had a request from her to be her friend. And I thought, well, that's a little scary, but I haven't taken her off Facebook. I just look at her picture every once in a while.
Where did you cruise to?
Oh, yeah. We flew into Sydney and cruised out of Sydney and went completely around New Zealand. And we were on a 14-day cruise, and it was a wonderful trip, and I miss her every day.
Good. All right, buddy, pick one of those. Buddy, get you, don't you go anywhere. Pick one of those 3 questions. Who influenced you? What have you done? Or what's happened to you that's pretty special?
I hadn't left Starkville.
Well, that'll make a difference. That's even more what we want to know.
What's the first question?
Who influenced you in your life
Well,
since you left Starkville High School?
Talk into the mic, buddy.
I'm going to have to say my wife.
Your wife?
I went in business for myself, and we had some hard times and good times, but she stuck with it.
Now that's an amazing story. Thank you. That's the kind
I
of
bet
thing
your
we
wife
want.
Barry, she kicks your butt out every morning and says, go make money.
I actually didn't leave Starkville High School. I stayed up there for 37 more years. Well, but it was an important time, and probably some of the wonderful teachers that I had at Starkville High School were role models to me. I mentioned last night Miss Hodges and Mr. Foster, and so I really appreciated the education that I got at Starkville High School.
Good. Your turn, Ann.
Well, I guess I should say my daughter has influenced me more than anybody else. I was teaching and then was principal at Canton Academy Elementary School. And she was working at Papel in Memphis, which is a stationery shop. Had worked at a paper place in Jackson, and she said, Mama, there's a lady in Memphis, in Germantown, that sells wedding invitations out of her house. And she's taken a whole lot of our business. You need to do that. For 2 years, she tried to talk me into it before I ever got some wedding albums and started doing that. And I really think the Lord was leading her to lead me into that business, because after I started that and got to know a lot of people, especially in Jackson, it was doing real well, and then my husband had a stroke, and I could not have stayed at the school if I had not done that. I wouldn't have had anything to do. And I was able to do this from home, and they would come to my house until he got better, and I could go to them again, but anyway, and I have really enjoyed that business.
Makes it hard. I would say probably the best thing that's happened to me with Ruth. And we got married and I drug her around to some places. Seemed like every time that she said, I will never live in a certain place, there's something, we ended up there somehow or another. And she said, I will never live in Lubbock. And about 2 years later, we ended up out there for a few years. And she said, I'll never live in Houston. And we ended up being there for 33 years. But she finally did adapt to Houston. And then after my mother passed away and there was no longer any real reason to live in Houston, she said, we're going to get closer to our younger grandchildren. And so she finally got a move that suited her.
I never left Starkville either. And probably the person who's had the most influence in my life is George Verrill. But Fern Cobb, lady at First Baptist Church that I was in Bible study with for 40-something years, had a huge influence on my life. She was a very godly woman, and I learned a lot from her. Very grateful for Fern.
First of all, I just want to say, I moved here from Sturgis my junior year. And a lot of the guys I didn't know. Anyway, I didn't know until we started having class reunions. And I want to tell you how much I appreciate all of you. And I love each one of you. And I'd like to say one thing. I wish more would come. Some of, especially these right here in town. We don't see them either. But the most exciting thing that ever happened to me, Richard and I went with his brother and wife out to Colorado a few years back, and we went up into hot air balloons. Yeah. Oh, that was great. I'd go right now if anybody take me up.
Great.
Well, I didn't leave Starkville until I was 53, I guess, when I married Byron, and for the first time of marriage, so that was probably an interesting thing, I guess you would say. And he, in my health situation right now, he has been a wonderful caregiver for me, and I just appreciate him so much.
Great word. Yeah.
I, like Judy, went back to the high school. Actually, I did leave Starkville for 1 year, went to Tampa and taught a year, but couldn't get home fast enough after that. Margaret Copeland and I did, and then I did teach at the high school, and I certainly would just reemphasize what Judy said, that we went back, and I went back and was with the teachers that I had. And I couldn't call them by their first names like they wanted me to, but it was really great. One of the most fun things that I ever did was go on a trip to New York in 2008 with 4 of our classmates. And it started at our 47th reunion, that was in 2008. And Jean Paris, that night, she said, my son is going to be in New York, and would anybody like to make a trip to New York? And I said, ooh, I would just love to. And Lucy was standing there, and she said yes. So in September of that year, Jean put out an email. And Jean and Rita, help me Rita, Lucy, and Trudy, the 4 of us, somehow we made it to Atlanta, and met Jean. And we made it to New York, and we just had a wonderful time. It was December the 8th, so we got to see the lighting of the tree, and it was freezing cold, but we just had a wonderful time. And it was really the beginning of these reunions at that time. So, but that was a very special time to me. Sure.
I tried.
Well, let me say what I did. I went to her, she was standing over there, because several people asked me, who's that lady? And I went over there, and Buddy Gentry told me the line he used to pick up people in bars. And what he said was, go to him and say, what's a nice girl like you doing in a place like this? And she told me, so tell him who she is. That's pretty cool.
This is our friend Shirley Wells in Tennyson, and she was with us grades 1, 2, and 3, and then came back. We figured it out. Okay, grade 7 for 1 year, and then they moved on, and she graduated in Columbus in the same year we did.
And she lives in New York.
City, New York City. She does, and we've had several wonderful visits there. I had. My grandmother probably was my biggest influence. And I always wanted to be the same kind of grandmother. I wanted my grandchildren to love me like I loved her. She wasn't anything showy. She was just always there. And she had, in the age of the 50s and the 60s, she had no prejudice. None. Everybody was equal in her sight. She went out and loved everybody. And so that was who was the most definite influence on my life. And I've tried to do that wherever I've been. And I've been drugged some places too. I was in Pahokee, Florida, and Cornelia came to see me. And I thought, you know, it's a really nice place now that we've been here a while and I understand it a little bit better. And so she and William came and they stayed 4 or 5 days. And when we got ready to tell them goodbye, she reached out and she hugged my neck and she whispered, Bess, do you really like it here?
I agree.
And I really did like it there. I really did.
Well, let me first of all kind of tell my wife, and most of you don't know it now, that this is our second marriage, and we've been a long time, 39 years now, and I don't think I could have ever done any better as far as finding someone that would love my children and my grandchildren. And in about 2 months, our first great-grandchild on her birthday. But most of you probably know too, I'm going to talk about Coach Muse. Several years ago, first of all, in my educational experience, he gave me some good guidance as to what jobs to take, etc. But several years ago, I got a phone call from his secretary and asked me would I be one of 4 people to honor Coach Muse at the opening of the Muse Center there in Pearl, Mississippi. And for a few minutes I couldn't even talk because I thought it was a joke. I couldn't imagine that. But being one of 4, and Coach Muse can tell you who the others were, but that honored him, and I was there to represent this class, other players, other coaches, other administrators that have been influenced by it's not Dr. Clyde Muse, that's what I told him. I'm going to call him Coach Muse. Coach? And I hang up the phone, number 25. That's the way we meet and greet each other. But he was, that's probably the greatest experience I've had.
Great. I'm not in the class. But we all liked you.
I'm in the class, but we got somebody back here that's going to go before me.
My greatest experience was graduating from Mississippi State. Because I was not a good student. But, probably y'all all know that, when I went to Mississippi State, I made good grades. And I taught school for 32 years. My children that I taught mostly black children. And they were the greatest. They just were terrific, most of them. Some of them were awful. And, the greatest effect, the person, my husband, Gary, is a devout Christian, and he has turned my life around.
Amen.
That's pretty cool.
Well, there's no doubt who had the greatest effect on me, because believe it or not, when I moved here as a senior, I was extremely shy. I was an extreme introvert, which nobody believes. But Maurice completely changed me. Now, y'all can blame him now, see. But I had a wonderful life being a military family. My father was career military. I lived in the Orient in the Panama Canal Zone and married, left his house and went into Maurice as a second lieutenant into another military house. And we lived in Europe, and then he ran back and forth to Vietnam. But I have had so many blessed experiences, it would be really difficult to pin it down to just one, because I cannot believe the blessed life God has given me. And one of them was bringing me to Starkville High School my senior year. I can honestly say I was in Okinawa for elementary. I was in Panama I was in Fort Jackson, South Carolina for middle school or junior high back then. And I was in Panama for the canal zone, not the beach, for my high school. And the summer before my senior year, my father came to ROTC for his retirement assignment. And that's how I ended up with this fabulous group of students. And they had a tremendous, just being with y'all had a tremendous, I made better grades my senior year than I had made my entire life. And a lot of it was just the influence and friendship that it made on me with this class.
Okay. I guess the biggest influence on my life has been my husband. I chased him around Baptist Church, First Baptist Church, till he finally noticed me. And
you could have broken your leg doing that.
I still chased him after Charlie, right? Okay. But he was engaged to someone else, and I didn't know it. But he asked me out, and he broke his engagement, and we got married about 9 months later. But he's always supported me no matter what I wanted to do, and I've done a lot of things. Like I taught marketing for 33 years. I got my master's in marketing at Memphis State, it was called then. But he's always supported my art and my crafts things I do, and I've got things that, poor man, I buy so much stuff, and I've got canvases everywhere, and I've got paint, upstairs in the attic, and sometimes he'll go, I really think we need to clean out some of this. We're getting, maybe. But he's always supported me. He came down here in November, so he does know a few of you, but he always leaves it up to me to come by myself because he's not as outgoing maybe or something. He sat out in a car one time at a reunion, and so he decided it was best that I come by myself. Anyway, I'd say he was my best influence.
Well, I have great memories of all of our great teachers from Starkville High School, and especially the tall, handsome fella in the back, Coach Hughes. He was my science teacher, I think, when I was like 9th grade or something. So I remember his classes. Remember all of you with great fondness. I don't know that I've ever done anything cool, but I am very grateful for my husband and for our family, and we do now have a great grandchild, so we're excited about that too. My husband is going to continue this summer in Thailand. He goes with groups from Mississippi Baptist, and they will be working with children there too, so I'm not going to go along, but I'm pushing him. Thanks.
Well, I've done something cool. I want you to know. I flew in a helicopter over Victoria Falls between Zimbabwe and Zambia.
Wow.
And it was beautiful. It's a mile wide. And the rainbows and all were something else. But probably the best thing is I didn't fall out.
One of the people that has inspired me in my life, and it's going to come as a surprise to her, is Nell Crow Dean. She was great help in helping me get a job in the College of Education. And then she has battled cancer, and you can look and see that she's doing great, and that she and Byron came and got me tonight and brought me out here. And I think that is so wonderful that she will think of me like that and want to do something for me. And another person in my life was Wayne Hemphill. And y'all know, everybody here probably knows that we were very young when we got married. And we stayed together until death do us part. And then when he passed away, I got a sympathy card from a lady, and she said, truly, your marriage was one made in heaven. And I felt like the same way. So, and then I do volunteer work for Octavia County Hospital. I pass out ice water and juice to the patients. And it's a great joy because they appreciate it so much. So that's one of the things that goes on in my life.
Okay, some good questions, Kenneth. A lot we could talk about here. I think probably the best thing that ever happened to me was Pi, my wife. She's an unusual person, most unselfish, caring person I've ever known. And I've known some good ones, but she is an exceptional person. She never wants any credit for anything. She just does things. And she has had a great influence on me, and I'm very fortunate to experience that. Another one would be my father. I looked up to him. He was a quiet, shy kind of man, but a lot of substance there, a lot of character, and I could tell that. He didn't say a lot, but I could understand some of the things that he stood for and represented, and that influenced me during my life. As far as experiences, that would be a tough one. I would say maybe the best experience, if I'd look at it just collectively, would be the 12 years that we had together. We were an exceptional group, and the older I get, the more I appreciate that and realize that. I've had the opportunity to talk to people and meet people and know people all over this country. And sometimes we get off about our childhood and experiences that we had. And I always tell them, if I could do it all again, and I mean what I'm about to say, if I could do it all over again, I wouldn't change a thing. This is about as good as it got, and I consider myself very fortunate.
We got you, Art. You know, as far as people influencing you, I know you said after high school, but I've got to throw in Coach Nixon, this guy back here, Coach Craig. They were great influences, good influences. You know, a lot of coaches nowadays, you hear a lot of cursing and things. I never heard a curse word from either one of them. You know, just encouragement and godly men. After high school, my mother, father, and an uncle. My mother, father, and uncle, and I was always a little socially inept. I didn't get married until I was 31, I think. But I finally found a girl that would marry me, and she's been the greatest influence in my life since that time, of course. And that's just about got it. I've never done anything exciting.
Take it over here.
Thank you.
I guess. Charlie, right over here.
Charlie.
Well, I didn't have any trouble in high school. I was a good student, and I went on to Mississippi State, and I had no trouble there. Of course, I didn't have a tough curriculum. I was in political science or pre-law. So I get admitted to Ole Miss Law School, and I go in to meet with the dean, and he sits me down, and first it's a congratulations on being admitted to Ole Miss Law School. I'm feeling great, you know. And here comes my lesson in humility. Charlie, you made the lowest possible score that's ever been made for a student to be admitted to Ole Miss Law School. And I'm sitting there, I can't believe it. Nobody's ever told me that I was stupid, but this guy's telling me you're the stupidest guy we got here. And he said, if you study 24 hours a day, every day of the week, you might just make it with God's help. Well, I did make it, and I was graduated in the top third of my class and got admitted to the bar. but it was a big lesson in humility for me, and it was sort of a lesson like, you know, that guy, I don't know if he was just jerking my chain. I kind of have to believe him, you know, he had the figures there. But sometimes people say you can do things or you can't do things, and you just have to find out for yourself. But it sure took me off of my throne there for a little bit, you know, and let me know that, hey, maybe I was being a little too smarty myself, you know. So it was just, I think it influenced my life to pay attention to what other people say, but don't let it rule what's going to happen to you.
John, you do yours.
Hey, here, Virginia.
What am I doing?
Hello.
Here we go, Jen. You didn't hear what we're doing, did you?
No, but the food's almost ready, so that's the
Well,
most
you gotta do this. Tell us what's the person influenced you the most in Starkville High School, or
Since,
who?
Starkville.
Say that, since Starkville High School, yeah. Or tell us an event you've done that meant a lot to you, or something that's happened to you that's important.
Oh my gosh.
Like when you got out of the mental institution, you did so well after you got out.
All of you should be very proud of me because yeah, and so Kenny probably has been my biggest influence because I get to see him every year. And I remember, I think it was the first time I came, and I got on the airplane, and this guy was sitting there with his wife, and he looked up at me and he said, "Hi, I bet you don't know who I am." How am I not going to know Kenneth?
Who would want to?
Good friend. Lots of good friends here. Thank you so much. It's been a fun time coming here for the reunions.
All right, John, you and Cornelia.
Okay. Okay, real quick, because the food is here. I have to put a word in for my father. Louis and I were talking earlier, and I am literally a clone of my father. But my father gave me a great gift. He gave me this tremendous self-esteem. I believe I can do anything. I still believe that. And sometimes I try to do things that I really know I can't in my heart, but I think I can. So I got that from my father. But the person who has been the greatest influence in my life is my wife, Janet. Janet, I call her the treasure of my life. And the amazing thing is, the circumstance of me meeting Janet is like several million to one. And just real quick, we were at a bachelor party. The gentleman I worked for was the controller of the company. And they were going to make a controller out of me. I told them the first day they brought it up it wouldn't work. It took 8 months to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt it would never work. But at any rate, we became personal friends, and I was influential in him meeting his second wife. And since then, he's been married twice more, maybe more. I've lost track. But we had a beer blast outside of Starkville in a park, and with kegs of beer. And very late in the afternoon, I decided I was going to go to this very professional gathering place in downtown Rochester, the Shakespeare Room, because I was of an age then where, you know, I felt I was a young professional, and I certainly wouldn't go to some of the bars that I'd gone to earlier. So I'm on my way on the expressway to downtown Rochester, and maybe because of the beer, I got off an exit too soon. And I could have just done a U-turn and got back on the expressway to get off at the next exit, but for some reason, I had to go to the bathroom really, really, really bad. So I drove down this street and looking for any place to go to the bathroom. And there was a bar I hadn't been to for a few years named Miller's. It was a younger crowd, and on Friday night, you literally couldn't get in. So I had the thought that I would drive to Miller's, but if there was 2 people in line waiting to get in, it wouldn't work, because I couldn't wait. So I drive into Miller's, and there's literally an open spot in front of the glass window where you could see it was totally crowded inside. And so the minute I turned off the car, my little MGB, I decided, forget the Shakespeare Room, I was going to go to the bathroom, come back to the bar, get a beer, turn around and meet the first girl closest to me. So I go in, I force my way back to the bathroom, force my way back to the bar, which was a long bar, and got a beer, and I turned around, and there was this person with her back to me, about 2 feet away, with this full-length fur coat. And I knew nothing about fur coats. So I tapped her on the shoulder and complimented her on a raccoon fur coat. But that's what it was. It was a raccoon fur coat. So that was Janet. And, you know, we ended up, for some crazy reason, I decided after we talked for a while that I wanted to dance. So I took her across town. She was there with girlfriends, and we danced and, you know, got to know each other a little. But, all right, so that's the sequence of me just meeting Janet. But Janet didn't go to bars. She'd been out with friends on the other side of Rochester. She worked at Strong Memorial Hospital, and one of her girlfriends was getting married. So they had dinner on the other side of the city, and after dinner they said to the lady that was getting married, would you like to go for an after-dinner drink? And the lady chose Miller's because that's where she had met her fiancé. So just think of the odds. If I had gone 2 feet either way on that bar to get a beer and turned around, I never would have met her. And when I tell that story, I cringe just thinking of the odds if I hadn't met Janet, because she is really the treasure of my life. That's it.
In my business, we call that the providence of God, son.
Yes.
That's what it is.
He even shows up in bars. She's not going to stop.
She's not on this planet right now.
She's another world. Who we got? Cornelia? And Virginia, back in the back.
The greatest influence on my life was my mother, and she was a wonderful person, and I still miss her today. But after all of that, when I met my husband, I was only 17. We got married, and we've been married ever since. 58 years.
All right.
Wow.
The biggest influence of my life has been Frank, my husband, and we've been married 57 years. And one of the things that I guess he influenced me in was the craziest thing I've ever done. And that is I
wasn't crazy.
I was 70 years old, and our son-in-law at the time was the pilot, and and Frank had always wanted to go skydiving. I didn't. And so for a Christmas present, he gave him that he would take him skydiving. And so we waited until I think October of the next year, and somehow Frank and my daughter, who had also skydived, talked me into jumping out of the plane. And it was interesting. I cannot tell you what it was like when I first got out of the plane because my eyes were closed. But once I got out and I could see what was going on and the parachute did open, it was a real good experience.
I love it. Okay, time. Frank, you're a good man. You talk wanting to do the parachute jump at 70, you must be a salesman. Well, I need to do the prayer. I need to tell you, of course, Donnell, obviously 58 years we've been married, and she's been the influence of my life. You can't be married to a football coach and a preacher and evangelist and not have thick skin, and we did that. And of course, fortunately, I worked for Coach Bowden, Bobby Bowden, for 10 years, and Coach Bowden certainly had a real influence on my life. And then for 17 years, I worked with the Billy Graham Association, and Mr. Graham and the Lotz family, Ann Graham Lotz and their family had a tremendous impact on me, and probably developed my ministry more than anybody else, because they got me speaking at events at the Cove, and that opened up doors everywhere. And I can't even tell you how. I will tell you one story, and then I will do the prayer. I was in New York and Long Island, and you get intimidated when the grand people do an event because they plan this so much, they're gonna tell you what's gonna happen. And Scott Lenning was the crusade director, and he said, Ken, we want you to preach the youth night, and he said there'll be close to 15,000 kids there, and Michael W. Smith's gonna be there, and we want you to preach, and we'll have decisions, and you handle all that, but we've got the counselors trained. And so I'm pumped. And I get off the plane, and the guy who picked me up is from New York, and he said, I don't know what they've told you, but we don't do it like y'all do in the South. We're not going to have anybody there tonight, and ain't nobody going to come forward and no crusade. We can tell you that right now. So just make up your mind, whatever you're going to do, don't do that. That'll pump you up to preach to that. And I'll never will forget walking out on stage after Michael W. Smith had gotten through, and then like maybe 800 kids came forward to make professions of faith that night, and just blew me away, and it was an interesting time. The largest crowd I've done is the Georgia Superdome. The Amway Corporation has an event called Freedom. Chuck Swindoll did it the year before, and David Jeremiah did it the next year, and then I went to preach the next year, and the Mississippi Mass Choir and Sandy Patty did the music, and I preached, and that was the first time to 104,000 people, and you see yourself on the screen and you hear what you said like 5 seconds after you said it, and it's hard to preach when you hear that going on, but I've been very blessed to do that over the years. But I've always been proud to say I'm a Starkville High School Yellow Jacket, and I graduated from Starkville High School, and you'd be surprised at people that know where Starkville High School is. And y'all mentioned Muse and Craig, and all those people impacted me, and thank you, and you impacted me because you always kind of couldn't figure me out when I was 15 years old preaching, and you were faithful. And I told Carr Smith tonight, Truman is now with the Lord, and Carson Truman and Sonny Edwards and Jackie Walford were my onesiphorus. Paul said, if you ever run across this guy, he refreshed me. Be kind to his family. Well, Jackie and Carson and Sonny and Truman